How do you define vintage cars?
Any car which is over the age of 50 years old. The value of a vintage and classic car is very directly associated to its originality. Today, Indian cars are being restored at a standard which is world class.
Reading this article by McKinsey, they said it's such a safe investment. It's because it's not related to the global macroeconomy as such. What cars can Indians import?
Only cars could be imported. Cars from the late 50s, 60s, 70s can run real fast.
Okay.
But the idea is it's just not about speed. It's about the entire mechanical involvement and beauty of these cars. That's what sets them apart. The imperfections in a car make you fall in love with the car even more. For a person to be saving that money by, let's say, for the 60 rupees a day, he will first have to shell out a decent amount of money to buy an EV. I don't think right now every person in the society can afford an EV.
Makes sense.
You should know your subject. Whether it's anything, you need to genuinely like what you're doing in that.
Let's start off by help me understand one of the most interesting restorations that have happened, or say one of the most expensive that you've experienced. And
Interesting. I think every car has its own story.
yeah.
And we can talk about, every car, some cars are ground up restorations, some just require mechanical jobs,
Yes.
some require cosmetic jobs. But when we talk about like a ground up restoration, it's, doing a car from scratch, let's say. Every little bit about that car needs to be revived, from the cosmetics, to the interiors, the exteriors, the mechanicals, suspension work, everything needs to be done. So one of my favorite cars would probably be, which was restored, is a Plymouth Savoy.
Okay.
It's a very, very nice, the body line of that car is beautiful. It was done in a beautiful shade of green, and it belonged to a family from Delhi only. I'll share a few pictures with you.
Yeah.
It took a few months, but when it came out, it was a very, very beautiful looking car.
How long does it usually take to restore something like that?
There is no fixed timeline. Every car behaves in a separate manner. Some cars are, it depends on the spares. Some spares need to be imported. Some spares are available locally. And sometimes what happens is when cars come to you for restoration, a lot of the components, or let's say the components what we talk about, the door hinges, the handles, the meters, small buttons here and there, what we talk about, are, the owners still have them, but they're just not in place.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go into the hassle of probably, let's say, importing it or arranging for it.
Right.
So it becomes much easier. Some parts just need to be re-chromed,
Okay.
because the car in its origin is only going to look at its best when it's got its proper chrome.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends from time to time, basically, very honestly.
Interesting. Let's break this
There's
down.
no fixed number.
Let's break this down. I think there are a lot of people like myself who, watching this, they've jumped into this conversation, not knowing a lot about the world of vintage cars or classic cars. How do you, say, define vintage cars to someone like that?
How do you define vintage cars? So the vintage and classic cars, how you can define a vintage and classic car is any car which is over the age of 50 years old. Okay. So that's where we start off with this sect of cars. And classic cars can also be, after classic cars come in modern classic cars.
Yeah.
So modern classic cars obviously don't fall in this particular segment, but they're also very nice cars altogether. So now if we typically talk about it, we're sitting in 2025. So we subtract 50 years from it. We're in 1975. So any car pre-75 falls under this segment. And then when we talk about modern classics, we can go from 75 to probably the early 2000s even, which was also a great era of cars. And every, I think, individual automobile enthusiast has their own favorite era. The drivability of probably the cars of the 50s and 60s is better than obviously the cars of the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
But the grandeur of the cars of the 30s and 40s is way better. So it depends on what a person is typically interested in, what sort of a car, what is the purpose he wants the car for. Does he want that car to drive?
Yeah.
Does he want that car to be a garage queen? It completely depends on that. And where that person actually, what part of, let's say, life, what stage of life he's in. A person typically, some people want a nice looking, let's say, a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or a Packard in their garage.
Yeah.
They're very nice to look at, and they're very nice to drive as well. But today, because of the road conditions and the traffic, the drivability becomes a little tough. But then when we go, when we enter, let's say we talk about probably the 50s and 60s, the cars, and we're talking about body styles which are probably smaller, more maneuverable. They might not appeal to the eye for some as much as probably a Rolls Royce or a Bentley would, but the drivability comes in. So it completely depends on that.
You told me about how your father started to collect and,
He was always into cars. My father was always into, he was always fond of the idea of a car. So his first car was a Beetle. It was bought from a diplomat. In those days, a lot of these cars were, there were a lot of Beetles which were imported in, and they used to sell for as less. I think the first Beetle which my father picked up was for like 5 or 6,000 rupees. And he used to take really good care of that car and stuff, and he was always intrigued by the idea of vintage and classic cars. So I still remember while growing up, he picked up there used to be a Buick, there used to be a Chevrolet Biscayne in my house. So seeing those cars, it was very intriguing.
Yeah.
And but it became very, at the same time, it was also like I got used to seeing it every day.
Yeah, so it became.
But I got the regular reminder that these cars are special whenever my friends used to come over. Because firstly, it was very amusing for them to see a left-hand drive car.
Yeah.
Because these were American cars.
Yeah.
So they were all left-hand drive cars. And secondly, obviously comparing it to, back in the day, I'm talking about now the real early 2000s. There used to be the 118 NE, there used to be Zens. So comparing those days, the new cars, which were really small and tiny, to cars like these, it was a completely different ball game altogether.
Yeah, I can imagine. Someone like myself also, when we, probably go at your garage, look at those cars, it'll be like an amazing shot for someone like myself, or just, a newbie who is just getting exposed to the world of these cars. Tell me a little bit more on how you got into the business and what are you actually doing today in terms of helping people get their cars restored and other stuff that you're doing.
So initially, I was always interested and intrigued by the idea of vintage and classic cars, and cars has always been my passion and my love, which I've inherited from my father.
Yeah.
Whether it's new cars as well as old cars. So we'd literally talk about cars all the time at home. And so I've been born and brought up in Delhi, did my college here. So I was working in advisory earlier. I was working with KPMG, then I worked with Deloitte. And after that, my father was always into this line, and he has a restoration facility, like a small scale restoration facility. And I started after I I branched out, like I left Deloitte, which was my second job. I started going with him to the workshop, started learning more about the entire process of it. And I started indulging and like understanding cars of all sects, all sects. Like when we talk about it, it's not just the fancy cars. It's the cars start from a Jeep to a Fiat to everything. And that's how I got into the entire process with him of restoration, of understanding cars and all. Still a learning process. I'm very new into the entire process. So
Got it. So you had that love already there, and then you thought that this would also make sense, like work-wise, because you see this sense of.
I'd say it's more about passion. It's more about passion when we talk about it. Commercial angle will always be secondary to it, but it's all about how the entire process of restoring a car, restoring your own cars as well. We have a private collection, so we're restoring our own cars as well. We've got the facility in Jonapur, so which is we've got a current private collection of around 10 to 12 cars.
Oh, nice.
And a few of them are restored, few of them are in process of being restored. So yeah, it's a very different experience.
Interesting. How do you essentially, when I look at these cars now, or when you look at anything, you talk about crypto, you try to understand how is the value derived, right? There are questions regarding that. You look at any asset or something you buy, you see if there's, intrinsic value in something like that. When you look at vintage cars, I'm just trying to understand from a value perspective, how do you go about valuing a car? What are different parameters that are involved in valuing a vintage car?
See, again, when we talk about vintage and classic cars, it's not like it's an abundant supply of them. And secondly, I would not even want to commoditize something like that,
Right.
Because they are, at the end of the day, they're all pieces of art.
Yeah.
And today, as we progress year by year, it becomes a little tougher to procure such cars. So some cars are imported, some cars were probably imported years back into India. And so the value of these cars basically, when we talk about it, in contrary to how we see today, people modify cars, how people get into the mod culture, they want to change up how a car looks. The value of a vintage and classic car is very directly associated to its originality.
Okay.
How original it is. So whenever let's say there's a show which takes place, a concours show or a rally which takes place, the parameters which they check are that if how the engine health of the car is, how well is it restored, the paint job on the car, how original is the restoration when it comes to using the right parts, the mechanical components, the meters, the switches, every little bit about it, from the let's say the wheel caps of the car which was used in that era to what are put onto the cars now. Any sort of a mismatch, you minus your points on that. So that's it. You have to be very precise and specific about how the car is to be put out.
Okay. Even if you're modernizing it, it brings down the value because it's not original.
Modernizing in what sense?
Modernizing in terms of using, say, a different part that will enhance, say, the drivability.
Correct.
But it brings down the originality.
Yes, originality is key. Originality is key. So, I mean, people have different, some people, people must be doing that as well. But the idea is that for the kind of community which is built around vintage and classic cars, people want to keep their car as original. And the great bit is that people are getting into, owners and restorers are getting into greater depths of the entire, they're getting into greater depths to understand how they can preserve that car and how they can get that car back to how it was probably 50, 60, 70 years back when it was leaving the showroom back in the day or the dealership. And today Indian cars are being restored at a standard which is probably, I'd say, world class, which can go and compete with the best in the world. And there are a few which have gone cars have gone for international shows abroad.
Okay.
And they've come back with laurels.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So it's great for the vintage and classic automotive scene.
Wonderful. I was thinking of something when I asked you about this value thing ना, जैसे हम दारू की बात करते हैं, वाइन की बात करते हैं, so the older it gets, the more costlier it gets. Is there a similar correlation in ideally vintage cars? कि फिर how do you compare it to, say, the original cost, just to understand from a...
Again, it depends. So
if you could give me an example.
So vintage cars, so I just to talk about it from a perspective of, you're talking about value appreciation.
Yes.
So when let's say, it obviously depends on the rarity of a car. It depends on the demand I mean, obviously there are a few, it's a very niche field altogether. So it's not like everyone would be out there knowing it, demanding for it, and the supply obviously is not there.
Correct.
But yes, if a car is well restored, it's completely original and is very few in numbers, the car does over the years grow in value. Again, as long as it's kept kept the way it should be kept.
Right.
At the same time, there are some cars which, so usually they will not break value, but the appreciation point of view, like let's say when we talk about, I would not actually want to give a specific name to a car because it's not appropriate when it comes to, owners.
Okay.
But there are some cars probably which are available relatively in much higher number. And there are some cars which are available probably one or two in the country. So if you have a car, just from a very, let's just talk about from a common sense point of view, that if there's a car where there are only one or two or five in the country, and probably out of those five, you have the most originally restored car, you can probably, you're in that position to demand for your price. But at the same time, if there are a few cars which, let's say, produced in large numbers and kind of stayed on in India or were imported later, and there are still a lot of them available in abundance. Maybe they might be available restored, they might be available unrestored, but access to them is a little more in comparison to,
of course,
that rare car. They will probably not appreciate in value as much. But nonetheless, I mean, if we see a graph over the years, every vintage car, every classic car has appreciated in value, and by a great considerable amount. Whether we talk about an entry level car which starts with a mere few lakhs, and now, and if we compare it to, the Packards, Rolls Royces, Bentleys, which obviously have also appreciated in large quantities, in large numbers.
To back you up on this, I absolutely agree. So I was reading this article by McKinsey that they released in Feb this year. That also says there was a founder of a private equity firm called Asset Classic.
Okay.
What they do is essentially put private equity into vintage cars, classic cars.
Okay.
So they had data. So they had data to back this up. What you're saying, they said it's over the years it's been a minimum of 5 to 10% appreciation, if not more. So people who are looking to diversify their, even from an investment perspective, not just from the love of
You mean from a perspective of like if they have a portfolio of funds which they're diversifying into separate instruments, you're including vintage car as an instrument in that. Okay, interesting.
Yes. So they had data to back it up that it's such a safe investment. It's not related to
Was it country specific or was this?
This was global, but the firm's based in Europe. The guy who was talking about this, and they said it's because it's not related to the global macroeconomy as such. Like कि आपको
Got it. It has nothing to do with.
It has nothing to do with the
markets undulation.
The markets and so the value stays. The value doesn't.
Correct.
So it's not like say even a gold, जिसकी शायद market
correct
value.
Any market undulation doesn't affect what is happening to this.
Yes.
Because I mean, to add to this, what I'd also say is that vintage and classic cars is something. Again, when people are buying it, they're not really buying it. At least I can talk about the people who I know are not buying it from the idea of them wanting to grow their money.
Of course,
it's for them to enjoy the car. It's for them to because it's out of pure passion.
Yeah.
Trust me, because these cars are also they're like I mean, old cars are like London weather.
Yeah.
So they require a lot of TLC, and there can be days they can behave in a very moody manner. So there's a lot of effort which goes into these cars as well.
Sure.
But coming back to the idea of appreciation when we talk about it is the people actually want investing in these cars. They're investing their what we call probably their money which is just for passion.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where the market undulations and where your what we call spending logic takes a little backseat.
Yeah.
And it's based purely out of passion.
Yeah. Makes sense. No, that's definitely true. And investing is definitely not with the purpose of making money for, say, I think 90-95% of the.
And also, again, what you were coming back to what you were saying about the market undulations not affecting it is also because I also feel there is a lot of, especially if you're talking about Europe, and the people investing in it could be a lot of HNIs based in Europe.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about HNIs based in Europe, it's their extra money earned out of the it's their extra money, right? Out of their probably their disposable income after they've saved, after they've done everything.
Definitely.
This is for them to splurge.
Definitely.
So for them, they know that this money is going to be, this money again is for passion.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens tomorrow to, let's say, any sort of, we talk about it at a macroeconomic level, this is going to stay.
Interesting. But it was just interesting to know and read that you found something like this that, markets and global macroeconomy is not.
It's a very interesting thing. Actually, you can send this to me as well.
I'll send it to you definitely. Now, when we talk about since we brought in a global perspective, we were also discussing what cars can Indians import.
Okay. So when we talk about vintage and classic cars, just till a few months back, only pre-1950 cars could be imported.
Okay.
So post-1950 cars could not be imported. So when we talk about it, to be precise, we talk about it being 1949. But recently there's been an amendment which has just come in very recently, and now you can import a car which is 50 years and older, and it's on a rolling basis. So if today it's 2025, if we're sitting in 2025, you can import a car till 1975. Next year you can add another year into it. So now you've got a lot of a plethora of new cars, which are which I wouldn't say easy, but which are accessible to you. Okay. So it's not easy finding the right car abroad as well, and it's a little effort also. But for a person who's passionate about it, can 100% explore a lot of different cars now, because the era of the cars of the 1950s and 60s and until mid 70s, because it's up till 75 today, it's a very interesting era of cars. For both, I'd say, for American cars also, and for European cars as well.
Acha. Now this is a new, but it's nice that it's at least rolling basis, so the plethora will keep on increasing every year.
Correct.
Right?
Because then also it keeps, generation and generation can associate to it, right?
Yeah.
Because probably what we see as modern classics today will be really old vintage cars for a generation, for another generation ahead. So a rolling basis is very important as well.
Yeah.
So that all sorts of enthusiasts can get access, can have access to these cars.
Okay. Talking from a car enthusiast perspective, right? Someone who's, say, a consumer from you who would want to buy a car, right? Or people in general who are into vintage cars, have money to spend. How does that rule impact them? In the sense that, yes, there's a lot of plethora of cars. How do they go about, say, accessing a car that's sitting somewhere abroad? How do they find it? Is there a system that's there in place? How do they usually find a car?
Usually you can find cars online.
Okay.
It's not tough. It's tough finding a nice car, but you can. eBay is one example.
Okay.
You can look around. There are a lot of people selling. There are a lot of sellers in Europe. There are a lot of sellers in America. There's a sect of a market in Dubai as well. But then the idea is that there has to be someone who can vet the car, vet and examine the car. You can't. It's because it's not. It's not something. It's not like you're not ordering a phone.
Yeah.
You're getting a car, and you're getting a car which is 30, 40, 50 years old. So you have to, usually someone like, I have a few friends who would probably be wanting to import a car or who have imported cars as well. They'll have someone across the globe, maybe a relative, maybe a friend, maybe someone they know, an associate, who can at least go across, see the car. Everything needs to be checked. When, let's say, we're talking about a restored car, the quality of restoration, how how original the car is. Is it actually as promising as how it is displayed out to be? The documentation associated with the car, the chassis of the car, do the numbers match how it is? So because this is it's a very complex task.
Yeah.
So, and if you miss it, there's a one miss in it, it can cost you a lot of money and it can cost you a lot of heartbreak as well.
Yeah.
Because it's not small money at the end of the day. So yeah, it's like seeing cars online, you can find them in abundance. But actually getting down, and when you come down to importing a car, you need to be really personally involved in the entire process.
So they would either go, typically visit and see for themselves, or hire someone abroad and make them
Hire, or you know someone, rather, a relative. And again, the person going and seeing that car should be a car bug, should be a car guy, should be able to tell between it should be able to tell in the intricacies of the car, that what is correct, what is not correct. And because it is, at the end of the day, a lot of money we're dealing with, right? Whether it's any car, because the duties are also attached, importing these cars and stuff. So yeah.
Is it common for people to get pucked off with a half decent car when they thought the car was way better?
Wouldn't say, because this community and this entire what we call fraternity of people who are interested in vintage and classic cars really go into the depth of whatever whether it's a car they're buying from India, whether it's a car they're buying importing abroad. A lot of research, a lot of time is spent on it. There's not you won't see a lot of impulse. It won't be, the impulse would be probably the intention to buy the car, but after your intention is sort of certain that now I want to buy the car, then you take your time, look into it, and then you go ahead and like actually going ahead and pressing the trigger.
Tell me about some of how is this community engaging? I mean, you talked about events that happen a lot. Help me understand about how the community today is categorized in India. Matlab, someone who, say, would want to be a part of the vintage car community, say even 5 years from now, right? What is the structure in terms of how is the community today seated? You were telling me about a club that exists, right? And a lot of events that happen.
So there are many clubs all over India. I'm a part of the HMCI, which is the Heritage Motoring Club of India. And it is one of the oldest organizations when it comes to vintage and classic cars. And so my father was a founder member. We're going back over 20 odd years.
Oh, wow.
And I am fortunate enough to be a member as well. And so it's the fraternity is again very close knit. It's grown in numbers. I can't even put a specific number to it, but there are a lot of members today. A lot of founder members, their children like me have become members. So it's a lot of like there's a lot of brotherhood. There we become friends over years and stuff. And a lot of events do take place. We have the Statesman Vintage and Classic Car Rally, which is which has been going on for 50 plus years. And it happens it happens in the month of Feb or March. So there's a drive. People assemble. There are close to 100 plus cars, which assemble. They assemble at the Statesman House in the morning, and then we drive to Noida, come back and park at Dhyan Chand Stadium. And there's a prize distribution which takes place. There are a lot of concourse shows which have started recently. A brilliant show, the 21 Gun Salute, concluded in Feb, which took place at Ambience Island. It's many editions of that has taken place. It's taken place in the Ambience Island, at the Red Fort, India Gate. It's seen some great venues, and the Baroda Palace. So it's seen some really great venues as well. 2024 was the first year where we had the Oberoi Concourse. It took place at the Uday Vilas in Udaipur. And the participation is not just limited to Indian cars. There are foreign participants as well. So there are people coming, to participate with and compete with these Indian cars. So the difference in a rally and a concourse show is rally involves a drive. Concourse show, the standing show.
Right.
And, that's when the foreign participation really comes in, is when we see that I'd say kudos to all the restorers who are a part of our community. They're doing a fantastic job. The quality of restoration has really shot up. And I'd say they're giving a run for their money to every sort of foreign competition. And even like I'm repeating, Indian cars have gone abroad and have come back with laurels. So, and recently there have been more participative drives as well. So, we recently in Feb, in Feb first week, we had a drive for voters awareness. It was very well organized. It was organized by the HMCI only. So we drove. We had a flag off from Major Dhyan Chand Stadium. It was an afternoon drive. We drove all over Lutyens, Delhi, and then we had a nice prize distribution ceremony afterwards. Then there was a cancer awareness drive, which was associated with Fortis Hospital. And there are other events which keep happening here and there.
Yeah, interesting that it's happening like that, and interest increasing in that sense towards the community as well. And when we talk about, say, events like these, are or can enthusiasts just come and join into some of these events?
Sure. I mean, when we talk about the Statesman, when we talk about any drive which is happening, we have so many, there's an audience which comes in to see these cars. See, what happens at the Statesman is we have our drive concludes at around, let's say our drive concludes at around 12:30. Then we have a lunch. So, and the prize distributions are 4. So during that time, 3.5 hours, and even during the prize distribution, there are families, children, it's open to the public. They can come and walk in. The cars are obviously barricaded. And at a distance they come, people are very respectful. They click pictures with their car at a distance. Some, children want to sometimes sit inside a car, and they very nicely, respectfully ask you that if their parents will ask if they can come inside, click a picture and all. So it's nice. And for some people who are completely disassociated with the idea of a vintage and classic car, it's very intriguing because they try and understand how such an old car is operating and plying on the roads, because it's very tough for them to understand. And usually when we have these drives, it's very nice to see people being on the road also very appreciative and respectful about it, because they give way to these cars. They understand that the mechanicals of these cars are not as, are not as agile as a new car's braking system would be. And they give way to us, and they always puts a smile on a person seeing it. Because it's not an everyday thing. You don't get to see these cars every day. It takes a second for a person to even understand what has come in front of them. And when they see 10, 12 of them together, they understand what's happening. So similar to actually like what we're talking about, there are a lot of clubs all over India. Bombay has its own, they have their own few clubs. And clubs can be very specific as well. So there's a Fiat club, there's a Volkswagen club, classic Fiats, and on Sunday, so you'll see 20 odd Fiats assembling in Bombay on a Sunday, and they'll have a breakfast together. And then there's a Volkswagen club, Chandigarh has their club, then down south there are separate clubs as well. Then there's the VCCI. So there are a lot of clubs all together, and they're coming together and promoting the entire movement of vintage and classic cars in a great manner. And yeah.
Interesting to know, and glad that it's, very well there all across the country, knowing it from you. But are there like special efforts been made to say make more people engaged or aware? But I don't think you would do that because it's in any case a niche.
Yeah,
Like
people do get, special efforts in what sense would you say?
I mean, just say inviting more people to event. Like for example, there's audience there at
Yeah, I mean, it's always
Chapman.
promoted. It's always promoted. Events are promoted. In fact, the kind of turnout we see at events like the 21 gun salute, again, we had, there were people so the day the cars, the first day the cars are parked. You get the cars, you park them, you arrange them, how they have to be standing, how the aesthetics come into play. And when the show is open to the audience, and it's great. You'll see a lot of people come in. A lot of people, because there are banners, there's advertisement going on. It's online, offline ads as well. So yes, people do know about it, and efforts are made in that way so that more people can get educated about it.
Nice.
Yes, but obviously, I mean, it's not easy just to. I mean, it's not easy for you to be directly involved in it. You need to be driving.
Yeah.
But that's not the easiest job as well. But yeah,
makes sense. I don't know, just random question. Is there a way also that people can usually rent vintage cars for like drives or just for the experience?
not that I know of.
Okay.
Not that I know that anyone is currently actively renting out. At least in Delhi NCR, I don't see anyone renting out vintage cars, because also of the NGT rule, which is cars which are over 15 years old, you can't regularly use them. Even though vintage cars have special status, cars which are 50 years plus and their documentation is in place, you can apply for a VA number, which is a vintage automobile number, and that gives them special status. But still, it's not something which you can be driving every day of the week.
Correct.
So because of this law and norm, it's not a practice. I mean, there's no person renting out vintage and classic cars really.
Understood. But then in that sense, all of these vintage automobiles must have that special status, right? Otherwise, they won't be able to say drive.
See, it depends. If your documentation is clear when it comes to when I talk about documentation, as in ownership status is clear, the line of ownership is there, and then you go to the RTO and apply for a VA number, you can get it. And some people do face probably a little bit of difficulty if it's not as transparent or clear. But nonetheless, even if you don't have a VA number plate and your cars are, I mean, your manufacturing year is 50 years plus, it does qualify to be a vintage and classic car. That's right. So nonetheless, whenever you are having a rally or for an occasion, you can definitely ply this car with all permissions again.
Okay.
I mean, let's say if you're having a rally in Delhi, or we're having a rally in Gurgaon, or a drive in Gurgaon, wherever we're having it, the due permissions are taken first.
Every time.
Yes. They're taken every time, wherever, let's say, whatever route or whatever district that falls under, so that there's no sort of a hassle or disruption caused by them to us or us to them, either way. And it takes place in a nice manner. But it's usually it's always a happy occasion, coming out and seeing these cars. A lot of my friends who were more into modern cars, who also now the vintage and classic car bug has bitten them.
Oh, nice.
So it's just something which grows on you.
Do you think, would you say then, in that sense, looking at vintage cars and trying to create a comparison, as you said, your friends were, into cars, wanting to say buy a modern usual Mercedes, spending that much. Is your competition in that sense from someone who's associated with vintage cars, or you won't typically see it like that?
I didn't understand your question.
My question being, एक बंदा है who has, say, 1 crore to spend on a car.
Oh, you're comparing it to
I'm comparing it to a
vintage car versus a modern car.
Yes.
I wouldn't say it's competition at all, because the person the person who's buying a vintage, let's say who's saving for a vintage car, will only look at a vintage or classic car. He's looking at a specific car. And a person who's buying that Mercedes is obviously he's buying it for his daily use. The purpose is very daily use, or whatever you want to call it. He's making it his evening car, he's making it his runner, he's making it whatever it is. It's a very different thing. So vintage cars, I mean, it's always that extra bug which bites you, and you kind of get into the entire groove of it. And also vintage cars is something, you know, when people often associate cars with speed, with acceleration. These cars, especially the cars when we talk about the cars from the late 50s, 60s, 70s, these cars can run real fast. But the idea is it's just not about speed. It's about the entire mechanical involvement and beauty of these cars. That's what sets them apart. You know, the raw grunt, they're all naturally aspirated engines. I mean, turbos were unheard of. Turbos is such a modern term altogether. And understanding how, you know, I mean, we're talking about a time much before fuel injection also came in. So it's a very interesting thing altogether. It's just not about speed when it comes in. So a person who's probably just interested in driving a fast car, you'll never see him coming close to these cars. And that's why, I mean, whenever we talk to a person who's interested in vintage and classic cars, the idea of an electric vehicle will not really excite him.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. And even, you know, when I was reading that report I earlier mentioned, there was a lot of like, so what McKinsey did was they surveyed a lot of people globally who either have a lot of maybe 5, 10 classic cars, vintage cars, or people who are just who have a few cars. So they tried to understand why are they buying, what's the sole purpose. And as you mentioned earlier, I'm just coming, the circle's just completing over there, that it's the sheer love for the experience of driving that car will create. So that's big. You leave aside the looking at it from a value perspective, or, you know, looking at it from a...
You have to experience it to know. If you actually sit down and, I mean, you know, because, I mean, just giving you an example, I was in conversation with someone and they were talking to me about how the premium EVs are so fast. But the idea is they're really fast, they accelerate, they can push you to the back of the seat. But do they really give you that excitement what an internal combustion engine does? Not at all. It does not. And now we're talking about modern day internal combustion engines, which we're comparing, are also, for me, fractionally as exciting as what a classic car would be.
Definitely.
Because we're talking about massive engines. We're not talking about downsized engines. We're talking about big engines, 8-cylinder, 6-cylinder vehicles with a nice grunt. So it's a very different experience altogether. How would I put it? I'd say the imperfections in a car make you fall in love with the car even more.
And that's
because your involvement also comes in over there in the driving of that car then. Today cars are becoming so automated when we look at it. We're talking about stuff like ADAS and all. You know, the moment like you're changing a lane or something and that sensor detects it, it'll get you back in. Self-driving vehicles, then you're getting vehicles which are parking themselves. So, I mean, for when you're talking to a car guy about it, it won't excite him at all.
That's a good perspective to have. I mean, having you here and bringing that across as well as the world maybe move towards that way.
Yeah.
But
so, and there's a complete divide. There are people who are all for EVs and there are people all for these modern gizmos and all. But if you talk to a person like me, and I can actually vouch for most of my friends who are into vintage and classic cars, and maybe not even just vintage and classic cars, but automobiles in general, we still like the analog meters more. We don't like the digital meters. We probably prefer an analog meter. We don't want everything to be touchscreen. We like buttons. We like things a little old school. And I think they're more practical and sustainable in the long run. So I'm of the opinion that we're going to see a shift back to more of, I mean, it could be a little different take. It could be a rare opinion, but I feel from touchscreen we should be moving back to buttons. We will see analogs come in. We might see a resurrection in internal combustion engines, because right now the logistics of EVs. I mean, we've seen a rampant increase of EVs in India, and I'd say post-COVID especially. I mean, today when we are driving on the road, we're seeing so many cars with green number plates on. But I'm like, from a very practical perspective, is it practical to take an EV with probably a range of 250 kilometers? Let's talk about something which is not a premium EV, right? Because we have to talk about from a mass perspective. How is that reaching? Let's say if you have to go tomorrow to Shimla or someplace. Are there enough charging stations? And I'm not even saying it in a rhetorical manner, because if there are, I'm happy, but I'm not sure if there are. Not that I've actually surveyed this altogether, but I don't think right now the infrastructure is enough for EVs to completely take over.
Correct.
So, and it's just to see right now how, and even the costing. Today, I think an entry level EV, we're talking about a Tata Tiago, we're talking about the MG's entry level EV. Nothing is coming short of 8 to 9 lakhs. I mean, with 8.5, 9 lakhs is what you're minimum paying for that. So, from a costing perspective, that also has to come down. Right now, we haven't completely cracked that sort of a segment of market.
Understood. And I think that also maybe is a longer run game. You try and look at it EV as from a overall cost standpoint, how it maybe will reduce costs over time. But yes, how relating it to your argument of the love for internal combustion engines coming back, there's definitely merit to it, because when you have a lot of something, then you miss what.
But no, it's in love alone will not bring back internal combustion engines. I'm also looking from the practicality point of view. So today, if we talk about a person driving, let's say from Delhi to Gurgaon in EV, he's saving a lot of money. He's barely, I think someone was telling me, I could be completely wrong, but it's like a rupee a kilometer you're paying.
Okay.
Which works out to, let's say if you're doing a 60-kilometer round in traffic, you're paying 60 rupees, which is nothing in comparison to what you're probably doing in a petrol or a diesel vehicle, matter of fact. But when you have to do long distances, where are you taking these cars?
Makes sense.
And for a person to be earning, to be saving that money by, let's say, for the 60 rupees a day, he will first have to shell out a decent amount of money to buy an EV, which not everyone can do right. I mean, we're talking about the lower middle class. We have to tap all classes of the society. I don't think right now every person in the society can afford an EV.
Makes sense.
Then secondly, again, these cars, the electric vehicles, I mean, they give you, I think, a warranty, a good amount of warranty for your battery pack, which is, I think, 7 years, 8 years, 10. I don't know the number, but it's a great amount. But once your battery packs up, I think these batteries are also expensive. Correct. I've not actually dug much into the EV market because it's not something I want to purchase. But I don't think these batteries come cheap either. So the amount of money you probably have saved on your fuel over all these years by paying 60 rupees or 70 rupees per round or whatever. It all adds up because you pay in lakhs for a new battery.
Definitely.
So everything has to right now, I think, because it's very new. The entire idea of EVs is very, very new. Very new as in it's not a decade old in India. So it will take some time to understand the minuses as well. Right now it's on a high, it's on a plus. But I probably see a little balancing factor come in. A lot of the companies are also doing a lot of hybrid vehicles. Hybrid models are doing very well in terms of they've got self-charging batteries. So up till 40, your car is on an EV mode. The moment you tip 40, the engine starts up and your battery starts getting charged again. So the kind of economy and mileages you get with these cars is also great. Toyota is making some great hybrid vehicles. We've got the Innova High Cross. We've got the High Rider. Then they've been cross-branded in Maruti as the Invicto and the Grand Vitara. So yeah, I mean, that model is doing well also. Very interesting space and I'd say, time the automobile landscape in India is at right now.
There
are cars for everyone right now. A person who wants to drive a internal combustion engine car, a person who wants to drive an EV, hybrid, all sorts of stuff coming in.
Interesting, definitely, as you say, an interesting point to be in. An interesting point of time to be in,
Correct.
The world as, go on to become consumers or existing consumers of automobiles in the country. And yeah, I think overall, Angad, it's been a fun conversation. My purpose of having this conversation with you was to essentially understand how the world of vintage cars in India works. Maybe globally, how do you import these cars?
Correct.
And can you drive these cars usually or not? We touched upon that. So my understanding about vintage cars as an industry, the love, the camaraderie that's there is, very well brought out. Maybe some people who look at it from an asset perspective also brought in the point that, EV, vintage cars are say an asset that usually don't get impacted by the market forces
Correct.
like that. And there's a lot of events and interest happening towards the community, which is great to know and understanding in industry from my perspective.
Correct.
Now, as we head into the latter, part of the conversation, there's something we missed that should want to tell the audience or you'd like to discuss upon.
In relation, I mean, something that we missed on, we've touched mostly. I think we've touched everything when it comes to the restoration of a car, to the buying and selling of a car. I mean, one thing which we probably not touched is that India in itself has had. I mean, India in itself has some great cars. So it's not based just on imports. The cars in India itself were and are abundant. There are some very, very nice cars and a lot of American cars as well.
Anything you want to say? Just
I'd like to say that thank you so much, for having me. You're doing a great job, and I'd love you to I'd love to have you over for one of the shows. Please come and get everyone who you can.
Yeah, we'll try to get that, bring in that perspective also if we can.
Sure. It'll be great. There are a lot of, in fact, I mean, there are a lot of cafes opening now, cafes who want to promote these events as well. On the Gurgaon Faridabad road, there are a couple there. You must have heard of Throttle.
Yeah.
So whenever we go for our morning Jeep drives, we had a Jeep drive where we were hosted. We had a breakfast over there. It was nice. There are a few other cafes also over there. There's one called Trip Machine. It's a bikers cafe. So it's nice. I mean, we can build on a community where people are educated and they learn more about vintage and classic cars. And sure.
Definitely. Do you also see this, as we headed, मेरे दिमाग में question आई गया कि as opportunities, as you see all these cafes opening up, someone wants to do something in the vintage car space, do you think that's a good idea?
Vintage car, I mean, it's a great space altogether. Yeah. I mean, I'm not someone who's been in F&B. So I can't talk about the commercials of running a cafe. But sure, if your location is nice and when we talk about these cafes, most of them are on the Gurgaon Faridabad road, and that's where we drive. So if we have a nice place to sit and surrounded by cars and all, so whenever we walk into Throttle or Trip Machine, we talk. I mean, Trip Machine, there are bikes parked inside as decoratives, and that and Throttle as well. It's all about cars and bikes. So whenever you enter such cafes, you're going to be meeting petrol heads only.
Yeah.
You get to meet a lot of interesting people. The owners themselves are petrol heads. Their involvement is there. It's not just a commercial venture. I mean, I'm sure it's the end goal is that you need to churn out numbers. You need to be making profits.
Makes sense.
But it comes with a lot of culture.
And a lot of
So yeah, if someone is wanting to get into this space, it's great, but they should be having the passion. Then only will they be able to probably outshine the others who are in this space. Because if you just come in from that commercial business angle, you won't be able to get the finesse to attract people.
Yeah.
You need to have people of the community, people of the culture, and have that involvement to be successful in operating something in this space.
Makes sense. And I think that's a very, a good learning to share at the end of this conversation, that if you're trying to break into, say, any space, until and unless you build that connect with, say the audience that you're catering, over and above the quality of the service that you're offering.
Correct.
Makes you
because as a business owner, I mean, we talk about it. You should know your subject.
Yeah.
You should know your subject. Whether it's anything. Let's say you're opening, if it's something related to automobile, something related to sport, something related to, let's say you're opening a bar. Whatever you're doing, you need to have your subject sorted. You need to be involved in that culture. You need to genuinely like what you're doing in that. Because if you just think about opening it in terms of numbers, there will be people who can do it better than you.
Yeah.
Because they're actually interested in it and they know the people in that space altogether, and they can probably do it with more passion. So yeah, that's where it comes in basically.
Makes sense. I think it's been a fun.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
So much time. And thank you people for being here. Hope you learned something new the way I did. And it's just about getting to know a lot of different things, getting to, bring in a lot of different perspectives. So when you want to start something, you have a lot of different people and different spectrums of information with you. And thank you so much for being here. We'll see you in another one. Bye-bye.